It's all good, Chad. All good stuff. So try to keep things moving fast. Just to reiterate again, my name is Brett Jula. Missouri East District Manager here for the Boston Beer Company. So I don't just represent the SamuelAdams brands, even though that's what we're focusing on here tonight. Extra bonus points for anyone that can tell us the other brands that are in the Boston Beer portfolio. Saw your hand first. Yes. Now, we just launched 2 new ones this year as well. Anyone know the 2 new ones? Traveler Beer Company, yes. And one brand new one here. The other one we launched is Coney Island Brewing Company, the hard root beer. If you guys have seen that out there, we're going to be coming with a line of hard sodas as well, a hard ginger ale and a hard orange cream soda as well. So shameless plug for Coney of what's coming up down the road there. But there you go, perfect. Made the first sale right there already. Boom, appreciate that. So yeah, I represent those brands as far as my sales, and that's just what I'm in charge of is distributor management. I also have a team of 2 sales reps that we actually just recently hired a person last week to take over this area, the Loop and the downtown area, so it'll be nice to have some FaceTime down here with the accounts and some TLC that's been sorely lacking here for the last 6 months. But as far as my background, I've been with Boston Beer. Actually, I just had my 4-year anniversary with them 2 weeks ago, so... and I've seen many places here in my 4 years. Started off as a street-level sales rep in Columbus, Ohio, starting to sell the brands, 2 years ago, or for 2 years in Columbus. Got into distributor management, managing the lovely states of Arkansas and Mississippi for a year, and then I moved here to St. Louis in February. So still very new to the St. Louis area, not a stranger to the Midwest, born and raised in Pittsburgh, and again, spent some time in Columbus, Ohio. So love being Midwest, love the people, love the culture, love everything about it. So it's been a very smooth transition, and the people are great. So, compliments to you guys and everyone else here that's helped me make myself feel at home here in St. Louis. But enough about me. Just going to talk a little bit about SamuelAdams, give you a little bit of history about, the Boston Beer Company, how it was started, the direction that we're going in, moving forward, and just sort of give you an overview on the innovation that we have had, in recent years, and again, how that innovation is tying into, the modern age beer drinker today before we get into the beers here. So first off, some backstory on Boston Beer. It was founded upon the flagship as the SamuelAdams brand back in 1984 by Jim Koch. I'm sure most of you in here have heard of Jim Koch. Probably without Jim Koch, we wouldn't be having this class, wouldn't be having a lot of these great beers that are out here that are available today at our fingertips with, local craft beers and even, some more macro crafts that are out there, your Goose Islands of the world, your Lagunitas. Jim Koch really paved the way for craft beer here in the United States. Back in the 80s, and even if you look through the 60s and the 70s, really when beer first got started, it was mostly just mass domestics. It was your Budweisers, it was your Millers, it was your Strohs, it was your Pabsts. It really kind of consumed the market. Jim was really the first person to come in 1984 to really test the boundaries of beer and really start to experiment with the limitations and the different varieties that you can use with the way to brew beer and really just bring out the true flavors of the ingredients that are in beer. How that was founded was with SamuelAdams Boston Lager. Now, a trivia question for Boston Lager. Now, Jim Koch first brewed his first batch of beer in his kitchen back in 1984, bottled it himself, and hand-sold it to retailers. That's essentially, it's been a true grassroots movement with SamuelAdams and Boston Beer Company, and it really, truly is like the great American dream, the American story of just what you can do with a little bit of elbow grease and obviously a vast amount of beer knowledge to turn yourself into a successful brewery. He went from brewing it in his kitchen to now our company, I believe, is, I don't know the exact value of the amount, but I know Jim Koch is worth over $1 billion these days. So pretty impressive. And he went from brewing Boston Lager to now brewing 64 different styles of beer. And it's going to get even bigger next year. I looked at the portfolio and said, got a lot on my plate in terms of the sell. So really just an awesome story, awesome history about that, but I kind of digressed a little bit. Can anyone tell me what city Boston Lager was born in. I'm talking way before, because Jim got the recipe from his great-grandfather, Lewis Cook. St. Louis, Missouri. Absolutely correct. Does anyone know that? Anyone know that? Okay. Well, I mean, aside from aside from him, did anyone else know that it was born here? Extra bonus question: can anyone tell me where the landmark is? Can anyone tell you what current building? I'll give you a hint. It is a bar in St. Louis now. No, not. Big Daddy's, yes. Yeah. So Big Daddy's was that was where the very first SamuelAdams beer, I guess you could say, and Boston Lager, the very, very first Boston Lager, went through the brewing vessels at what is now Big Daddy's and what was called the Lewis C. Cook Brewing Company. So that's just a little bit of fun facts about just SamuelAdams, Boston beer, where it came from. I think it's a really great thing too that, we have roots here in St. Louis. So, local's a big push these days. I hear objections about that a lot when I'm out in the retail. So I kind of come back and say, well, SamuelAdams was born in St. Louis technically. So it's a local beer. So if you're in the locals, you should give SamuelAdams a try. Yeah. Big Daddy, there's not Big Daddy's in the Landing, it's Big Daddy's in Soulard. So right by the Budweiser Brewery. Yeah. So, all right, so that being said, any questions or any other things you were interested about SamuelAdams that, that I didn't answer, or any sort of historical things that, you'd want to know about? I'm sorry? We do, yes. So we contract brew in Stevens Point. The only things we brew there is SamuelAdams Oktoberfest, and that's just because the demand has just gotten so big that it exceeds the capacity in our commercial breweries. So for those of you that don't know, our commercial breweries are in Cincinnati, Ohio, and Reading, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of Philadelphia. So that's where but whenever we do get our big seasons like our Oktoberfest, we do contract brew in a few different cities. Stevens Point is one of them. So, yeah. All right, so that being said, I'm just going to get in. If there's no other questions, I'm going to dive into these beers here and try and get through in as timely of a manner, but also as detailed of a manner within that time frame as possible. So again, you guys are going to be tasting 5 beers here tonight. 2 of these beers are brand spanking new. First one we're going to be trying here, Rebel Grapefruit IPA, right now is available only in draft. It just hit Summit Distributing's warehouse, I believe, what was it, last week, 2 weeks ago? Last week, yeah. I just ran the report. I believe we only have it on tap at 4 bars right now so far. So you guys are getting a brand spanking new beer. It's going to be the first one we're going to go through. Then we're going to get into our Barrel Room series, which I'll dive into details. We'll then taste a small batch beer from SamuelAdams available on tap. It's a gingerbread stout called Merrymaker. And then we'll close with our brand new beer called SamuelAdams Nitro White Ale that we'll be launching, again, January draft, February package. So again, you guys are literally the very first customers to try this beer here in the St. Louis market. So make you guys feel a little bit special. So that being said, guys, this is Rebel Grapefruit IPA. Are you guys familiar with the Rebel family that we have? So again, guys, we launched Rebel 2 years ago because whenever we looked at the market, we understood that IPAs, and you guys should be no stranger to this, are a very, very hot style of beer. Just in the last year, it's grown 41%, but within that, with what makes up that 41% growth is a lot of different variations of beers. There's double IPAs, there's imperial IPAs, there's session IPAs. So there's all different kinds of IPAs that are out there, but there wasn't really one with much national appeal. It was a lot of local build, kind of grassroots movement. It's just sort of like whatever the local IPA was or the regional IPA, that's what people were gravitating towards. We decided to put all of our chips into the table on Rebel, and we put a lot of national advertising behind it. And I think what it's done is it's brought a lot of people into the IPA category, and it's really helped bring those new drinkers in, and I think everyone has sort of benefited from the launch of IPA of Rebel on a national scale, and I think we've really helped contribute overall a big part to that 41% growth. Within the family, we have Rebel IPA, which is just your classic standard, just 6%, 45 IBU IPA. We then have a session IPA called Rebel Rider. We have a double IPA called Rebel Rouser, which is a fantastic beer, one of my favorites. 85 IBUs, 8.4% ABV, great beer. But the next breakout style, what we feel like is going to be in IPAs, is grapefruit IPAs, which is what this is. So how many people in here have had, say, Deschutes Fresh Squeezed IPA or Ballast Point? Okay, technically grapefruit IPAs, or they like to fancy themselves as grapefruit IPAs because a lot of it comes from just the West Coast hops that they use in the beers. So your Citra, your Mosaic, your Cascade, all of those different hops varieties that you find from the Pacific Northwest give off a lot of those grapefruit citrus flavors in there. The difference between ours, and we use all of those same hop varieties in our Rebel Grapefruit beer. What really differentiates this beer from other grapefruit beers is we actually use real grapefruit juice during the brewing process and grapefruit peel in the brewing process as well. So it really adds that extra level of sort of juiciness and tartness that you get from a traditional, grapefruit or a grapefruit beer. Yeah, you could drink this. If you drink enough of these, you won't have to worry about getting scurvy. I got that. Yeah. So essentially, what I'll get into here is I'll walk through on each of these beers. We'll go through the classic 5-step tasting process within a beer. So those 5 steps are appearance, aroma, flavor, mouthfeel, flavor, and finish. Okay? So that being said, that way you guys can walk out here. If you learn something, you guys will learn the appropriate way to go through a tasting process of a beer. So first thing, Rebel Grapefruit IPA. When I look at it, you get a nice sort of unfiltered, light golden haze to the beer. Very approachable, very warm and inviting beer here. The next thing is the aroma. So if you take it up and smell it. This might sound crazy, but on Rebel Grapefruit IPA and the aroma, I get a distinct grapefruit smell on there. But again, that comes from, the hop varieties that we use, the Mosaic, the Citra, and the Cascade hops that we use that give off those bright grapefruit citrus aromas. And then also that distinct grapefruit aroma that you get just from the all-natural grapefruit that we use that are grown in Southern California. You 80% of what you taste is what you smell. So actually, if you do this, if you ever have had a cold and you try and eat something or drink something, you'll notice that your taste buds are really kind of muted. You don't really get much flavor off of whatever you're having. So you guys can kind of do a taste test where if you plug your nose and take a sip, don't really get much of anything, but then you unplug it and you just get that rush of flavor and aroma. So whenever you taste it, again, a lot of what you smell. As far as the mouthfeel goes, very, light to medium bodied, very crisp, very fresh. And in terms of flavor, again, very bright on the grapefruit side, a little bit more accented than your typical West Coast style IPAs that are out there, just with that added punch of grapefruit. And then on the finish, again, very crisp, light, bright finish, and slightly bitter from the hops that are on there. Anytime, when you get an IPA that's like this, anything that's really above 35, 40 IBUs, you're going to get something a little bit more on the bitter side. This, in terms of IBUs, comes in at 52, and it's 6.3% ABV. So kind of aligned in terms of the numbers, very similar to a lot of classic IPAs out there, but again, the difference in this one, a lot more, I feel like, more refreshment, coming in than other IPAs, just with that added grapefruit juice and all natural flavor that's in there. What do you guys think of it? Perfect. It is, yeah. And we'll also, so we have draft available now. 6-packs will be coming with this in February. So, yeah, yeah. I do know that Cicero's is the only bar in the Loop area that has it on draft right now. Somewhere around there, yeah. Does it remind you of any beers or anything like that? Because I'm sort of curious, just because this is our new launch, so I'm interested in feedback. Honest feedback, good, bad. Anything you guys would like to see more of the beer? As far as the grapefruit balance, do you guys think it's a fair amount? Too little? Too much? What do you guys think? Yeah, where you get, so you sort of get a little bit of that bitterness. It sort of balances that out a little bit. I will say this, too, about the Rebel family in general, and this beer is no different. We have a little bit more of a malt presence than a lot of traditional IPAs. So what makes that nice is that it makes it more approachable for your non-traditional IPA drinker, for someone that might be intimidated or just doesn't like IPAs. Just a lot of the malt varieties that we use, we'll use 2-row pale malt and caramel 60 malt in a lot of our beers. And so caramel 60, you can imagine, has some semi-sweet characteristics to it. So that sweetness and then just the overall body that the malt adds to the beer helps cut through a lot of those harsh flavors that hops will give off in IPAs that turns a lot of people off. And I think with IPAs, especially ours, and even our Rebel Rouser, which has more of the most malt presence of any of our IPAs, it does not drink like a double IPA. It's very approachable, very smooth, something that someone who doesn't traditionally drink IPAs can come up, have one, and not make a bitter beer face, and actually enjoy a little bit. So, Traveler does, yeah. That's actually our lead style is the Elusive Traveler. It's a grapefruit ale, and that beer, if you guys have not had the Elusive Traveler and you like grapefruit in your beer, that one is about as good as it gets. It's a grapefruit shandy, and it is absolutely knock your socks off. Very good, fantastic. Anyone in here had the Elusive before? It's awesome. And what's great about the shandies is the mixology with them, too. I mean, in terms of beer cocktails and everything, you can get super creative and super fun with them, just with the heavy grapefruit presence in there. And even something as simple as, you could drop a shot of gin in there and everything would be great, Just adds a little kick to it, and it's absolutely wonderful. I actually would suggest that. If you want to take a shot of Tanqueray or whatever your favorite gin is and drop it in a pint of Elusive Traveler, and it's wonderful. Yeah. So. If you drink enough of them, yeah. Yeah, just add gin. There you go. All right, guys, moving on. Does everyone have the next beer in front of them? All right. So this is kind of in our high-end series. This is SamuelAdams Tetrivus. It was first brewed in 2013. It was the fourth and most recent in our lineup of our SamuelAdams Barrel Room collection. So is anyone familiar with our Barrel Room collection? We've got 3 other styles. Obviously, we're tasting 2 here. The 2 that aren't here tonight is one called Stony Brook Red, which is a Belgian red ale, and then SamuelAdams New World, which is a Belgian triple. Essentially what we wanted to do with this brand is we were looking at, again, I mentioned to you, our brand and how much we've innovated over the past, and that's what we're looking to in the future. Beer drinkers now are just more sophisticated than ever. They're looking for more everything, whether it's more hops or, more yeast or more sour, whatever it is, they just want more of everything. And even in the non-alcoholic sector, you're looking at things that are just super sweet or super loaded with flavors or really high intensity, where you're starting to get these. And a lot of it is people like me, those asshole millennials that are growing up now and, making up the majority of the sales. We grew up on things like Red Bull and like Starbucks and Coca-Cola and all these different sodas that are out there, that were high intensity, high flavor things. So naturally, whenever we're going to that cold box or we're going to that bar to look at that draft tower, we want some things that are a little bit more complex, a little bit more sophisticated, and something that's basically not just your run-of-the-mill everyday beer or everyday liquor or what have you. This beer in general, or this series, this Barrel Room collection, kind of hits on all those points. So within Boston Beer, SamuelAdams in particular, we kind of touch on all the bases of beer. We've got the beers that got, your everyday Joe beer drinker that if they just like drinking Bud Light, we've got something for them. All the way up to your core craft, and then your heavy craft beer drinker, this is right up their alley. So I wanted to bring this again. I thought, yes. Barrel Room. Yeah, Barrel Room. Yes. Sorry. So again, kind of what Chad led with tonight, in terms of, myth busting or what have you. I think this series does a good job at doing that, is that, we aren't this big conglomerate, out to kill the little guy beer company or anything like that. We look as far as we want to see fostered growth and health across all craft beers. We're never out to get anyone or, kill the little guy or anything like that. But at the same time, we want to live in that world because we see the demand for these kind of beers. So just a background on Tetrivus. First off, it is a Belgian quad. All right. And what a quad is, and you're going to get, I guess I can just explain it as we're tasting the beer, but you'll get a lot of deep fruit flavors in there and dark fruit. So raisin, prune is traditional in a lot of quad beers. But what makes this beer unique and different from a lot of other quads and each style of beer that we have within the Barrel Room collection comes within the brewing process and the storage of how we use it. So gets its name because we store it in Hungarian oak barrels. So that's where we get them. That's where it gets the Barrel Room collection name from. And we store it there for 9 months. So each of these beers that you're having here, even at its freshest or newest rather, it's been aged for 9 months in these Hungarian oak barrels. So, and they're all Belgian in style. So what you're going to do is you're going to get a lot of these flavors. There are going to be a lot of sour notes on the beer as well. And how many of you, if you go ahead and taste it, anyone get like a distinct sour note on there? Yes. Okay. So where you're getting that from is, number one, just from the style and from aging it in the Hungarian oak barrels, but also from the yeast strain that we use. And we use a special strain of yeast in this beer and in all of our Barrel Room beers called Cosmic Motherfunk. It's a catchy, sexy name. Jim actually came up with it himself, because really what it is it's just a combination of all the wild yeast strains that we use that are floating around our breweries. Essentially, we just take rags and wipe them down off the materials, and then we just throw that rag in with the beer. Sounds kind of gross, I know. Yeah. But you know what? In terms of yeast, if you want to get like turned off from beer or something like that, you can talk about yeast because it can come from some pretty strange places. Chad, you might know. I can't remember who's the brewery that made a beer. It might have been Stone that used beard yeast to make the beer. Yeah. So yeast doesn't always come from the most glamorous of places. So I promise you, our breweries are all very sterile, very clean. But we take that yeast, and it's all the different yeast strains that we use within our beers, wipe it down, and basically just throw that in there. And that's where you get a lot of different of the complexities, and that's where you get the distinct sour note on that. So I kind of jumped ahead on the flavor, but I guess I can kind of walk through the 5-step process now, getting back to it. If you look at this beer and hold it up, again, a little bit darker, get like a deep ruby, almost garnet in color. It's my favorite color. I'm a Florida State grad, so garnet and gold. Love that. Whenever you smell it, Again, that's where the characteristics of the quad really comes out. You get a lot of those deep fruits. You get that prune, that raisin aroma. And whenever you drink it, again, same thing. You get a lot of those deep fruit flavors, the prune, the raisin, but also that nice sour balance in there from the Cosmic Mother Funk. As far as mouthfeel, medium to a little bit heavy-bodied, almost leaves a little bit of a coating on your tongue, but the finish is very smooth. I think it's nothing that really lingers on the palate all that much, but just a nice overall, very well-balanced beer. And this comes in at 10.2% ABV. Yeah, and that's where, and I think most quads are a little bit more on the sweet or on the sweet side. I think just with the Cosmic Mother Funk yeast that's in there, and then just the overall storage and the characteristics you get from the Hungarian oak, kind of really mellows that out and balances out and makes it a more balanced beer. Yeah. That's a great question. So he asked what you would pair this with at food. One of my favorite pairings that I drink with this beer I would pair this with any sort of dessert, like a really rich dessert. You have this with like a slice of chocolate cake, or if you have it with like a cheesecake with like raspberry sauce or strawberry sauce on there. Something with a little bit of, because you get a distinct sour note on this and you get that deep fruit flavor. So in a way, it complements and cuts what you're eating. It complements, the fruit flavor, the rich sweet flavors that you get, from like a cheesecake or a chocolate cake. But then the sourness also kind of cuts out that sweetness a little bit. So yeah, as far as what I would pair with this, yeah, I think a dessert, this would be a good dessert beer to pair with that. What are you referencing? Anyone have a bottle I can see? Okay, perfect. All right, so what are you referencing here? Oh, yeah. You know what? I've honestly never really noticed that on the label, and no one's ever asked me that. It could. For attention to detail on that. But you know what? Let me ask someone in our brand development team, and I can get back to you on that because I've honestly never had anyone ask me that before. Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense then. Yeah. Yeah. You can take a look. Yeah, it could. Well, I'm sorry. Say it again. Yeah, so if you notice, like, if you drink like have you ever been to like, or has anyone been to like the Side Project, that brewery down in Maplewood? So they brew a lot of beers that are just like live lambic style beers that are very similar to these beers here, and that's just given the style of beer. Whenever you get lambics and this KMF, like a lambic yeast or this KMF. It's a wild yeast strain. So anytime you take a wild yeast strain that isn't controlled, whenever you put it in the beer, it really kind of cuts through that carbonation, makes it a little bit more flat. But yeah, it does sort of make those bubbles more dense and smaller, and that's essentially where it comes from. That's sort of the yeast impact that it has on the beer. If we typically target like $11.99 or $12.99 for a 750. At retail, yes. At retail. Yeah, in the package stores, that's what we target. $11.99, $12.99. I don't know what Chad picked up some just now. I don't know what he's charging, But the IBUs on this one is the Tetrivus is going to be 25. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry? In a food? Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, just it's the Hungarian barrels. Yeah, it's actually pretty impressive. If you Google, search the Sam Adams Brewery, you can or Sam Adams Barrel Room, you can actually see the barrels that we store these things in, and they are massive, majestic pieces that are pretty awesome to look at. Very impressive, a very authentic feel to it as well. It's okay. I'll let you know. But all right, everyone ready for the next beer? I'm going to go through this one a little bit more quickly just because I gave you the backstory on the Barrel Room series. So this one here is 13th Hour Stout. So it's a Belgian style stout, which I don't think there are very many of them out there. But again, a lot of the same qualities that you see in the Tetrivus, you're going to see in this beer. What makes this beer unique is, first off, the name 13th Hour comes from the number of ingredients that we use in there. There are 13 different ingredients that we use within the beer. Some of them that really stand out are going to be all natural vanilla, coffee. Those are the two biggest ones that we use that are in there. Next time I come, I will try to memorize all 13 of the ingredients. But you know what? Even in my homework that I did, it was hard to even find where the 13 ingredients were. 13 different ingredients, all natural vanilla and coffee are two of the chief ingredients that we use in here. But I think what you'll see in here is you'll get a lot of similar characteristics that you'll get in a traditional classic excellent stout, but added complexity and balance from the Cosmic Mother Funk and the oak age barrel age that we use in there. So again, they all have the same, yeah, all have the same yeast strain in there, yeah. So again, looking at the color on this, actually, I believe I grabbed, oh, here it is. Yeah, I was going to say, this looks like Tetrivus. So when you look at this one, you pick it up, it's almost essentially opaque. Very dark, rich black that you would see in a traditional stout. And then when you smell it, I think the aroma on this beer is kind of crazy and something that's really not out there in any other style of stout beers that you'll see. Again, you get a lot of those traditional aromas that you will get from a stout. So you'll get almost like a dark chocolate or a roasted chocolate, roasted caramel, vanilla, again, that you'll taste in there. And then again, from the Cosmic Mother Funk, you almost get that sort of, almost like a little bit of a fruit aroma to it, and then sort of a sour smell to it. So now whenever you taste it, you'll kind of see how it all blends together. Again, a lot going on in this beer. You get subtle fruit notes on there, but again, some coffee, some chocolate, some vanilla, almost a little bit of like an oak flavor from the barrel or from the barrel aging. I pick up subtle pepper notes in there as well. And then on the finish, again, very smooth, very clean for a beer that comes in at 9% alcohol, and that's a stout. Again, when you throw this Cosmic Mother Funk in there, it really kind of takes the beer for a ride and really changes the complexities of the beer. Yeah, it really does. Yeah, so that's when you're drinking these beers, honestly, drinking them chilled is great, but you could just buy these and drink them at room temperature, and that's where you'll really pick up the true, consistencies and complexities within the beer. Yeah. Yeah. Well, because whenever I mentioned, that we use this Cosmic Motherfunk where it's got a bunch of different yeast strains in there, well, wine yeast is one of the strains that's in there. So naturally, if you're drinking like a red wine, you're not going to want to drink a red wine that's chilled. You're going to want to drink it whenever it's room temperature. So that's like with these beers, and really with any sort of like heavy craft beers or anything that's, off the wall or oak age beers like these are, the closer to room temperature they get, the more the true flavors that you're going to have. Because if you nuke something, like it drives me crazy whenever I go into a bar, like how many people here have heard of Twin Peaks, like that restaurant chain? They pride themselves on serving like the coldest beer in the world. And I'm like, that's the worst thing you could probably pride yourself on, because the last thing I want to do is drink a SamuelAdams winter lager out of a frosted mug, and it turns into, essentially a slushie. I don't really mind it, but you just can't taste anything. It really masks the flavor. If I want to drink like a Coors Light or a Bud Light out of a frosted mug, yeah, that's fine, because I'm more or less just, drinking that for refreshment. I'm not drinking Bud Light or Coors Light for the taste, with all due respect to those beers. But if I'm drinking a craft beer, and it could be anything from a Boston Lager all the way up to this, I don't want to drink it out of a frosted mug. I want to drink out of a mug that's at room temperature, because that's not going to hide any of the flavors. It's going to make for an overall more enjoyable experience. But getting back to it, yeah, especially with that Tetrivus, whenever you drink it, it gets smoother, and it brings out a lot more of those fruit notes that are in there. So like that prune and that raisin that's in that beer really comes out the warmer that it gets. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, because they're Belgian in style, where we definitely use some Belgian style yeasts and the way we make the beer. So I mean, when you go over to Belgium or you go over to a lot of places over in Europe, you're going to drink a lot of their beers. A lot of those people that are in there, they'll drink the beer, at 53, 55 degrees. Or if anyone's had a cask conditioned ale, cask beers are served at, close to 60 degrees. Cask beers aren't really my cup of tea. I do like my beers a little bit chilled, but I can't really stomach that. But, in terms of, bringing out the full, like just everything that's in the beer, from the flavor and the aroma, the warmer it gets, the more those are going to stand out. Not for everybody. This is out of our small batch collection. Essentially what our small batch collection is, it's a seasonal rotator that we mostly have in 22-ounce bottles and that we will bring in limited in draft. They're essentially very limited. We get one-shot allocations that I work with the distributors through and that everyone does in their markets, and they bring them in, and essentially what we get, that's what we get for the market. So this is our winter fall batch. This is our third year with the Merrymaker, previously called Merry Mischief. I don't know why they changed the name. I really like the Merry Mischief name a little bit, but I digress. Anyways, this is like the 13th Hour, it is a stout, but it is a gingerbread stout. So perfect for those really cold, like dead cold of the winter, around the holiday season. You get the stouts, it's really warming and really inviting, and then you get all the flavors and the aromas that kind of remind you of Christmas time or just the holiday season in general. So key ingredients in here are going to be what differentiates itself from other stouts that are out there. Number one, there's no actual gingerbread that is in the beer. It's just what we use in there. We just use heavy amounts of cinnamon and nutmeg that really kind of, when they blend together and you use them in high enough quantities, really bring out that gingerbread, sense, aroma, and flavor. It's 9% alcohol. So again, a little bit on the bigger side. And to me, it's going to be a completely different complexity and experience than what you're going to get out of the 13th hour. So when you look at it, again, it's very similar in color, like black and opaque. And then whenever you smell it, again, that's where you kind of get those holiday aromas in there. Very heavy on the cinnamon and the nutmeg. No licorice, no, but you do kind of pick up a little bit of that, right? Mm-hmm. That again comes from that we use toasted barley in there, and then the 2-row malt that we use as well. You're going to give off those bread notes. Mouthfeel to me a little bit on the heavier side versus 13th hour. This is kind of a true full-bodied beer with a little bit of a lingering finish. It's slightly bitter, but again, that you get a really big explosion of flavor with that cinnamon and that nutmeg that kind of comes together and blends nicely, with the traditional flavors that you get with your stouts, almost your coffee and your chocolate. It comes together really nice, just creates a really nice, rich, spicy, and semi-sweet beer that's perfect for the holidays. What do you guys think of this beer? Yeah, we got this on draft here. It's one of we got only 12 kegs of this stuff in the market. So, yeah, there's only 12 kegs of this available, and I believe, yeah, What's that? Do we do it on Nitro? We do not, no. So I'm actually because the next beer is gonna be a Nitro beer that we're doing. So it's a little bit of a segue. Yeah, so there's when it comes to Nitro beers, a lot of people think you can just take any beer, whatever it is, however it was brewed, and then you could just tap it on the Nitro tap. You can't do that unless it was truly made, because it's got to be consistent throughout the brewing process, the packaging process, and then going on that tap. So like, for instance, I can't just take a keg of Boston Lager or a keg of Merrymaker. Now, you could, under the right circumstances, if you use the right gas consistencies and the pressurizations and then the packaging and then you put it on Nitro, it's got to be Nitro from start to finish. I can't brew it one way and then throw it on there, because essentially what's going to happen, can anyone take a guess at what's going to happen if I take a beer that isn't nitrogenized and I put it on a Nitro tap? Yeah, Armageddon, but yeah.
Yeah. Guys, we're about to pour the last beer, and I thought that Brett might want to actually talk about the can, because this is actually a Nitro beer with a widget at the bottom. But before he talks about that, while we're kind of pouring, I wanted to say one quick thing, and that is that you'll notice the cans that we're coming around with. There's a sticker on there that just kind of says SamuelAdams Nitro Belgian style white, and it's like this really kind of crazy can, because the state thinks that this is Boston Lager, FYI. So that's why it looks like this. So just don't tell anybody that we're tasting this tonight, because, you'll notice the can when they come around. It's kind of awesome. So anyway, enjoy.
So I'm glad that Chad actually handed me the can, because I wanted to do a demonstration here on how to properly pour and drink this beer. You're not going to drink it straight out of the can. But anyways, before I get into that,
please. No,
let me talk. I'll talk a little bit about this beer. So essentially, this is going to be our lead style. We're coming with one of 3 Nitro series starting next year. The white ale is going to be the lead style that we're going to have on draft and in 4-pack 16-ounce cans. We're also going to have 2 other ones. We're going to have a Nitro IPA, and we're also going to have a Nitro coffee stout. I've had all 3 of them, and they are absolutely fantastic. But again, just to give you a little bit of background on Nitro beers and what makes it, I got into a little bit, with your question about that. Essentially, what this is there's a completely different brewing process, and it all has to do with just the gas and the pressurization with a Nitro beer. Any style has the possibility or has the potential to be nitrogenized. Just again, there's a myth out there where they think I can just put this on tap, on a Nitro tap, and it's going to come out smooth and creamy like a Guinness. Couldn't be further from the truth. There's got to be a consistency and a strict consistency within the gas balance between carbon dioxide and nitrogen that has to happen all the way from the brewing vessel to the can or to the keg and then to the tap. Does anyone know what the consistency has to be, or the ratio of nitrogen to carbon dioxide for a nitro beer? Anyone else want to take a stab at it? No? And not quite that high. 75-25. 75% nitrogen, 25% CO2. And again, that's got to stay consistent throughout that. Now, what's important about that is, whenever you get to the cans, is there's a widget at the bottom of this, and what that does is since cans aren't quite as, I'm trying to think for lack of a better word, not quite as airtight, for lack of a better word, as kegs, we need something within the can to kind of maintain that nitrogen balance in there. And that's where the widget comes in. So if you notice, if you've ever had like Guinness or seen those 60-ounce kegs, if you pick it, you can hear it like kind of bobbling around in there. There's a ball. There's two different ones you can use. You can use the ball that floats around in there, whereas ours is actually just, it's a block and it's attached to the bottom. Has the same exact impact. That's just the one we wish to use. So now whenever I'm going to do this, I'm going to demonstrate because it's pretty cool. Whenever you take this home, so whenever you guys love this and you take it home to buy it, come February, this is how you're going to drink it. You're not just going to pop it and drink it straight from the can. That would get really gross in a hurry. So what you want to do is you just want to pop and pour. And whenever I open this, you're going to hear a huge rush. And that's all the nitrogen coming out that widget was holding in. It's going to come rushing out, and then I'm just going to pour it straight into the glass here. So I'll demonstrate. And you'll see as opposed to, the beers the beer overflowing, you'll see a beautiful cascade, and you can pass that around as people are doing it. I encourage you to pass quick so people can see the cascade as much as they can. But again, that's the effect nitro beers have. So I'll go ahead and taste it and describe the beer in general. That's a little bit of background just on nitro beers in general and what happens, in the consistencies of how to, brew and package a nitro beer. Yes. Nitro White Ale. So I'll actually get into the beer here. So again, this is just Nitro White Ale, so not surprised, it's just a nitrogenized version of a white ale. So in terms of ABV, it comes in at 5.5 ABV and 25 IBUs. So again, whenever I look at it, similar to most white ales, you're going to get a nice straw golden haze, unfiltered. So if you wiggle your fingers behind it, you're not really going to see anything. And then whenever I smell it, kind of smells like a classic white ale. You're going to get some rich, almost tangerine or citrus, and a little bit of coriander spice on there. And then whenever I drink it, again, a lot of those similar flavors that you get in that white ale, that citrus and that coriander and almost that little bit of peppery note, but very smooth and creamy from the nitrogenization. But it doesn't taste gross and flat or anything along those lines. And again, a very, very smooth finish. It's one thing you'll find with nitro beers is they're obviously going to have a very smooth, very creamy finish. Fun fact about this beer, or just white ales in general, white ales originated as a gruit beer. So they are one of the first beers that were ever created. It's gruit beers, and essentially what that means is that that's what they used before hops became anything in beer. That's how they stored beers. That's how they kept beers fresh. That's what they used as a brewing agent, because whenever hops first came in, that's essentially, that's what they used to help store the beer, add flavor. IPAs, India Pale Ales, that's how things got moved forward and got shipped over from India to the United States. They used hops to keep things fresh. Before they discovered hops, they used gruit. And that's where you get, whenever you taste this beer, does anyone pick up any hop flavor or any hop aroma on that whatsoever?